We are less than 48 hours away from draft day, and it is now time to officially reveal my 2023 NBA Draft Big Board. In this video, I'll be giving you a brief rundown of each of my top 60 prospects, in addition to revealing what tiers I put them in terms of their NBA outcome prognoses. While these explanations will be shortened for time's sake, if you want to go deeper with each of these prospects, I highly encourage you to check out my 2023 draft guide, which gives highly detailed scouting reports on each of my top 60 players with stats, suggested game film, NBA outcome prognoses, and 47,000 words. The link to the guide will be in the description, and for now, let's get straight into my ranking. At number 1, with no surprise, it is Victor Wembanyama out of Metz 92 in France. Wembanyama is the only player in tier Wemby, which is basically a tier I had to create because of how good of a prospect he is. The handle, the feel, the scoring pop at all three levels, given his size at around 7'4", really makes him a can't-miss prospect, assuming he stays healthy. And that's just a half of it with him, as he is a phenomenal defender, can switch on the perimeter, elite rim protector and shot blocker, and really just the type of player that can do everything at a very high level, which is incredibly rare. Victor Wembanyama gets the nod as my number 1 overall player. We now move into tier 1, which I define as having realistic all-NBA level upside, and in this year's class, there is only one player I have in this tier, and that is Scoot Henderson out of the G League Ignite program. I think he's one of the most dynamic lead guard prospects we've seen in quite some time. Really good at getting into the teeth of the defense and making plays for himself and others. I understand people worry about the shot and the defensive versatility, but I think the shot will come around eventually, and even if it doesn't, 32% represents a decent floor for a guy who I think can get into the paint pretty much anytime he wants to, and I think he's a little bit more versatile than people are giving him credit for, considering he does have a 6'9" wingspan, and so Henderson comes in at number 2. Moving into tier number 2, I have two guys in this tier, and I define it as fringe All-NBA / high-end All-Star level talents. The first guy I have in this tier and my number 3 overall player is Brandin Miller out of Alabama. Super skilled and fluid 6'9" shot creating wing. He's just the type of versatile weapon that every single team wants to have on their roster. One of the best 3-point shooters in college given his volume. People do worry about his self-creation and rim finishing. Personally, I think he has enough juice in that regard to make it work. I think his rim finishing got a lot better as the season went on, and people also tend to underrate his playmaking ability. This is a guy who made really high-level passing reads throughout the season, and he also projects well as a versatile defender. Miller is the archetypal wing that really thrives in the NBA, and that's why I have him at 3. And then at number 4, I have Ausar Thompson from Overtime Elite. The second he's drafted, he already becomes one of the best athletes in the NBA. The combination of dexterity, twitchiness, and burst is really something that I haven't seen in my 4 years of doing this. Very good passer, very good player in transition, and just another guy who can get into the paint and make plays whenever he wants. Obviously, the shooting is a major concern, and that's what really lowers his floor as an effective NBA player, but I think the athletic tools are just too tantalizing to pass up here, and that's why he is in tier number 2. We're now in tier number 3, which I define as fringe all-stars. I have 3 players in this tier, starting with Cason Wallace from Kentucky at 5. He maybe isn't the flashiest prospect in the class, but I think he might be one of the most effective. Elite on-ball defender and off-ball defender, has great instincts on that end. He is a built 6'4" guard with a 6'6" wingspan. Showed a potential to play either guard spot at Kentucky. Had to adjust to a variety of lineups. Knocked down threes at a decent rate. Has an underrated acceleration ability that allows him to get to the rim and finish there once he does. His offensive versatility, given the fact that he can play either on or off the ball, really sells it for me. And given his game, I think he's one of the highest floor players in this draft. At 6, I have Anthony Black out of Arkansas. 6'7" lead playmaker, one of the best processors of the game in this class. Can make every pick and roll read. He's also phenomenal defensively, as he can switch 1 through 3 while also battling hard on that end. Never takes a play off, and just really is the type of two-way player at the point guard position that gives you a ton of roster flexibility. Black needs to improve as a shooter and overall finisher, but his basketball IQ, playmaking, and defense, given his size, makes him a top 6 player in this year's class. At 7, and the final member of tier 3 for me, is Cam Whitmore out of Villanova. Never really felt like he got a full rhythm at Villanova, but the athletic tools and shot creation potential are undeniable. One of the most powerful yet quick and bursty athletes I've seen in a long time at the wing position. Has a real ability to create his own shot off the dribble, and while the results weren't necessarily there this year, He just has all the tools to be a really high-end two-way player as someone who can create his own shot, get to the rim, and defend multiple positions, and that makes him a fringe all-star level prospect in my view. We now move into tier 4, which I define as having guys that project as high-quality playoff caliber starters with legitimate upside too, and leading that off is Jarace Walker out of Houston. One of the best overall defenders in the class. I think he's someone who can legitimately defend 1 through 5 in the NBA. Just the type of switchable forward slash center that you really are looking for. Also showed some nice playmaking skills in high school that I don't think he really got to show off at Houston, but he's one of those guys who can kind of create his own shot out of the post. I do worry if he could ever put the ball on the floor and go get a basket in isolation situations, and I also think the shooting might be a little bit of a worry long term, but as someone who is just built like a freight train at 6'8", 240 pounds, and can move so lightly on his feet, I think that holds real value in the NBA, and really all the offensive skill stuff comes as a bonus for me. At number 9, I have Ausar Thompson, again out of Overtime Elite. Very high feel, connective passer who again thrives in transition much like his brother. Again, the shooting is a massive worry here, and the reason why he's lower than Amen is because I don't really see the primary playmaking ability with Ausar. Still though, was really effective during the Overtime Elite season. Another tremendous athlete, can defend multiple positions, and showed some real shake and wiggle with the ball, which if that gets tapped into, can really make him a high leverage player in the NBA. At 10, I have Taylor Hendricks out of UCF. For me here, it's all about the catch and shoot ability at 6'9" and the defensive roaming ability, where he was awesome as a second side rim protector who could also stay in front of smaller players. He's the type of big shooting wing slash forward that every team kind of wants on a playoff roster. Just his versatility, his shooting, and his upside in terms of making plays for himself off the dribble makes him a top 10 player for me in this class. At number 11, I have Jalen Hood-Schifino out of Indiana. This might be on the high side for Hood-Schifino, but at the end of the day, 6'6" guards who can create really well out of pick and roll and hit mid-range jumpers, I tend to buy. I think Hood-Schifino is the type of guy who can be really versatile defensively. He can play with other primary guards due to his size, and again, he knows how to attack defenses within NBA schemes, which I think really helps his transition to the league. I worry about the overall burst and ability to get fully to the rim with Hood-Schifino, but the composure, the IQ, and the size, I really buy. At 12, I have Michigan's Kobe Bufkin, one of the most impressive off-ball guards that you'll see in the NBA draft class this year. At 6'4", has a really nice wingspan, can actually make plays for others out of pick and roll, had some really impressive live dribble passes while also being a knockdown spot-up shooter, and someone who can actually create his own shot as well from all 3 levels. Defensively, he is slight, which may hurt him getting on the floor early, but he really battles and generally has a great sense of where to be. So if you're looking for a really smart, versatile guard with a lot of skill, I think Bufkin might be the guy you're looking for. At 13, I have Gradey Dick out of Kansas. At 6'8", he's one of the best shooters in the class, if not the best shooter. Shot 40% from 3 this year, can really shoot off movement, great at getting on balance, has a high release point. People tend to knock him for his defense and lack of athleticism, but I think he makes up for that in terms of his reaction time and coordination. This is someone who has some of the quickest hands in the entire class, and he also showed a real capability of attacking closeouts and finishing at the rim if he got the opportunity. But make no mistake, Gradey Dick is being drafted here because of how lights out he is as a shooter, and the rest of it is all icing on the cake. My last player in this tier is Dereck Lively II out of Duke, just an unbelievable rim protector who struggled at the start of the college season but really came into his own by year's end. Has real ability to switch out on the smaller players thanks to his length. You'd often see him blocking 3-point jump shots. Can definitely thrive in drop coverage in the NBA as someone who can contain the ball handler while also protecting the rim and cutting off any alley-oop attempts. Offensively, I think he's mainly a rim-running lob threat, but he has shown some ability and promise as a shooter going back to his high school days, so that's something that you can also look forward to down the line. We now move into tier 5 in my big board, which covers low-end starters slash high-end rotation players in the NBA. Leading this tier is UCLA combo guard Amari Bailey. I really like Bailey's ability to play both on and off the ball. He struggled to start at UCLA, but then once he got going, he really became one of their better shot creators and passers. And frankly, I just think he's somebody who knows how to play a role in the NBA. He's someone who doesn't get sped up, plays with great composure, and he does hustle. And for me, that books him as an NBA rotation player. Next up, we have Leonard Miller out of the G League Ignite program. He tested the waters in 2022, but decided to come back and play for Ignite. Now he's emerged as a mid to late first round pick in this year's draft, has really tantalizing on-ball flashes at 6'10". He's someone who I could easily see being a useful scoring weapon for a team that lacks front court production. I worry about his overall foot speed defensively, but he still does a really good job hustling, going after loose balls, and grabbing rebounds, as he snatched over 11 per game. And really, when you're playing against pros in the G League, averaging 18 points and 11 rebounds is really, really impressive. At 17, I have Nick Smith Jr. out of Arkansas. Obviously not the season he wanted this past year, but I do think he has enough built up based on his high school resume for me to take him in the mid first round. He's a wiry scoring guard who has a really nice float game. He showed really solid athleticism when he was healthy, but unfortunately that wasn't the case at Arkansas, as he struggled with a knee injury the entire season. Obviously his efficiency wasn't great, his numbers weren't great, but I buy the overall touch in terms of a pick and roll creator who can create his own shot, and at this point in the draft that holds very high value. Next up, I have Jett Howard out of Michigan. I initially had Jett in the low 30s, but then after going back and rewatching him, I really started to convince myself about the on-ball creation he has with his handle and shooting ability. Hit 37% of his threes this past season at Michigan, and while I do have worries about his defense and overall impact on the game outside of scoring, I really just tend to buy the self-creation ability that he showed. I think the handle is really snappy and quick, and he has a real ability to hit difficult shots, which gives him a top 20 ranking in my view. At 19, I have Keyonte George, similar to Jett Howard except a little bit smaller. He's one of these guys who struggled with efficiency, but you could just really tell the offensive skill was there in terms of his ability to get his own shot. 6'4", power-based athlete who has great separation ability and just kind of had moments throughout the year where he would just take over games. The problem was that he just wasn't consistent all year, and that's where the worry is going to come in terms of George being a high-level starter in the NBA. So right now I'm a lot more comfortable projecting him as a guy who can come off the bench and really give you some solid offensive production in a bench role. At 20, I have Bilal Coulibaly out of Mets 92. He was a teammate of Victor Wembanyama this past season, and he really just caught scouts' eye because of how athletic he is. 6'6" wing who does a really good job fighting over screens defensively and just roaming all over the floor. Has a great wingspan that he uses to jump passing lanes and get out in transition and finish. Offensively, I think he's a little bit more of a work in progress, which is why I have him a little bit lower than what you may see other people have him at. He knocked down 36% of his threes, but I think the mechanics are clunky. I'm not really sold on the handle just yet, but still, he's young enough and it's clear he has massive, massive potential, so he sneaks into the top 20 for me. At 21, I have Kris Murray out of Iowa. I think he projects really nicely as a complementary 3-and-D piece. He's somebody who, while only knocking down 34% of his threes this past season, has really clean and swift mechanics that I think bodes well for him in the NBA. Defensively, he's really good at using his length to disrupt passing lanes and harass ball handlers. Iowa would often put him at the top of the press and let him cause chaos in the defensive backcourt. He's a versatile wing defender who can knock down threes, and that to me is a first-round pick, even though he doesn't really have the self-creation or movement skills of his brother Keegan. At 22, I have Brandin Podziemski out of Santa Clara, really productive guard at the mid-major level after transferring from Illinois where he spent his freshman season. High-level shooter, very solid passer, elite rebounder for his size, and overall has an outstanding motor, which I think makes up for some of the athletic deficiencies that people are tending to worry about with him. I like the shot creation here and the overall hustle of Podziemski, and he gets a first-round grade from me. At 23, I have Jordan Hawkins, the best movement shooter in the entire draft class, hands down, no debate. He's someone who occupies defenses because he never stands still, and he has great balance on his shot and off the catch. He can come off pin downs, come off flare screens with total ease, very fluid as a mover, never seems to run out of energy. The reason why I have him a little bit lower than perhaps others do is because outside of the shooting, I'm not sure where he can really impact the game in an overtly positive way. I think he's a fine defender, but not a great one, and then overall, I'm not sure if the self-creation ability off the dribble will ever come for him, but still, as someone who can just come in and be a movement shooter, Hawkins has real value here. At 24, I have Hawkins' teammate, Andre Jackson, as kind of the opposite of Hawkins himself. Andre Jackson is a guy who can just best be summed up by he does everything really well except for shoot. This is someone who's a high-flying athlete, phenomenal defender, awesome motor, great passer, great screener, really just is everywhere all the time defensively, and he's just one of these guys who truly does enough to make up for the lack of a jump shot to be effective, whether it be as a short roll passer or a slashing wing, or even as a point guard in some lineups, I think Jackson does too many things well to not be a successful NBA player. At 25, I have Olivier-Maxence Prosper out of Marquette, an egoless offensive player who will crash the glass, attack closeouts off the catch, and knock down an open three with relative consistency, but defensively is where he really shines. At 6'7", he has an outstanding wingspan, incredibly mobile, shows great hustle, can shut down bigger wings and contain smaller guards, and really just a versatile, tough glue guy that belongs on any contending roster. Rounding out tier 5 is Jaime Jaquez Jr. out of UCLA, incredibly skilled 6'6" forward with kind of a throwback game as he likes to operate out of the post a lot, but make no mistake, he's exceptionally quick with the ball. One of the most fluid spin moves I think I've ever seen in my time evaluating. He's so graceful as an offensive player. He's someone who is a great team defender and makes up for perhaps a lack of athleticism with outstanding instincts and anticipation. The key for him will be the shooting. If he can knock down a reliable amount of threes, then he really sticks in the NBA. If not, I find it hard to project a consistent role for an NBA team. We now move into tier 6, and I define tier 6 as mid-level rotation / C division guys. And by C division guys, I basically mean guys where if I watch them on their pre-draft team, I get why people see them as NBA players. Like, I understand the appeal behind them. I'm just personally a little bit lower on them. And also, in the interest of time, I'm kind of going to run through these last 34 players just to keep this video relatively short. So at 27, I have Jalen Pickett out of Penn State, one of the most unique players in the class thanks to his booty ball style where he just backed down players from the three-point line. Very good passer, very effective rebounder. I kind of just like him as a late first-round bet here. At 28, I have Jabari Rice out of Texas, elite wingspan, great team defender, awesome shooter. He can come off of screens and fire off shots. Has been on winning teams throughout his entire college career, and I tend to like those types of guys at the end of the first round. At 29, I have Trayce Jackson-Davis out of Indiana. I think he is a very productive, highly skilled big who can offer some rim protection and passing vision on the offensive end, while also giving you some scoring as a lob threat and post finisher. At 30, I have Duke's Dariq Whitehead here. 6'7", 220-pound wing who really shot effectively from three, but didn't really get to show his full range of skills due to a foot injury that kind of limited him all season. At 31, I have Noah Clowney out of Alabama, a 6'10", rangy forward who has really nice versatility defensively, but needs to round out some of the skill-oriented parts of his game if he wants to stick in the NBA. At 32, I have Colby Jones, kind of a jack-of-all-trades type of player who can offer you some scoring, some defense, some rebounding, some passing. Highly efficient and intelligent player who can just give you anything you really ask of him. At 33, I have Bryce Sensabaugh, one of the most impressive scorers as a freshman at Ohio State this past season. Really efficient in the mid-range area of the floor and from three. I just worry about his overall defense and his use outside of scoring, considering he lacks the athletic pop to really be a #1 option in the NBA. At 34, I have Seth Lundy out of Penn State, elite three-point shooter and a built 6'6" wing who I think can really do a good job defending bigger wings in the NBA. Elite competitor and someone who can definitely play a role on a winning team. At 35, I have Julian Strawther out of Gonzaga. I think he has some of the nicest footwork and touch in the entire class. Very effective shooter from deep, really good with runners and floaters. I can see him being really effective next to a high-level passer and decision maker who can create advantages for him because he's so good at kind of slipping into the defense and getting what he wants. Defensively, I have some concerns. He's never really been a positive player on that end, but I think the overall offensive skill is enough for me to take him in the top 40. At 36, I have Marcus Sasser out of Houston. Really tough competitor, great point of attack defender, very solid shooter who can kind of create his own shot off the dribble, also has great footwork going downhill. The problem is that he's only 6'1", and I'm not sure how versatile he is, considering his best role is probably as an off-ball guard, but he's definitely someone who can give you elite point of attack defense while also knocking down threes. At 37, I have Ben Shepherd out of Belmont. He has great shooting versatility and length. He knocked down over 40% of his threes this past season. At 38, I have Sidy Cissoko out of the G League Ignite program. He's a big wing at 6'7", 200 pounds who plays larger than what he's listed at. He's really good at dislodging defenders on drives when he can get downhill speed and momentum. He can definitely play as a big defender who can switch onto all types of front court players. My worry with him is that he is somewhat of a boxy mover, and I'm not sure where the scoring potential comes with him. Hasn't shown much as a shooter despite having nice feel offensively, and that could really limit his impact on an NBA floor. At 39, I have Jordan Miller out of Miami as just the ultimate glue guy. He's a mature 6'6" slashing wing who knows how to get to his spots offensively and really makes an impact defensively thanks to his anticipation. Coming Coming in at 40, I have Maxwell Lewis out of Pepperdine. Rangy 6'7" wing with a 7-foot wingspan, smooth shooting stroke, and just really looks the part of a modern 3-and-D wing in the NBA. At 41, I have Kobe Brown out of Missouri. Very talented offensive wing who can fill a variety of roles thanks to a well-rounded game. Very effective shooter who knocked down 46% of his threes this past season. High-level passer and can kind of create mismatches on his own because he's a tweener at 6'7", 240. My final guy in this tier is Jordan Walsh out of Arkansas. Really just an outstanding defender who can switch pretty much 1 through 4 in the NBA. The issue will come whether he can provide anything of note offensively. Not a good shooter and really doesn't have much of a handle. I think he provides real value as a cutter and screener, but I'm not sure if that's enough to get him on the floor consistently in the NBA. Moving on to tier 7, these are guys who I think have low floors, but offer real value as rotation players in the NBA if they hit. And leading off this tier is GG Jackson out of South Carolina. Obviously not the season he wanted, considering he reclassified up to join the Gamecocks. Struggled all across the board from his defense to his efficiency to his playmaking, but the handle and the wiggle and shot creation at 6'9" is legit enough to the point where I'm comfortable taking a swing on him in the mid-second round. At 44, I have Rayan Rupert from the New Zealand Breakers. Played a key role as an off-the-bench spark plug for one of the better teams in Australia's NBL, but I'm not sure if he has anything right now in his game that puts him on an NBA floor right away. Not a very good shooter, and his defense, while it's good, it's not enough to warrant putting him on the floor given his total lack of offensive production. I think he's really a few years away from being a key rotation piece. At 45, I have James Nagy from Barcelona. 7-foot, 250-pound big man who has really great mobility for his frame. One of the better shot blockers in the ACB this past season. He gives you nothing on offense right now, but his defensive versatility and upside is what makes him an NBA prospect. At 46, I have Demoy Hodge from Missouri. 6'4" off guard who is an elite knockdown three-point shooter and also one of the most effective defenders at his position in the class. Led high major conferences this past season in steal rate while also knocking down 40% of his threes, which gives him 2 legitimate NBA skills to bank on as he moves forward in his career. At 47, I have Ricky Council IV out of Arkansas. He's a big scoring guard who can really attack the basket and create separation. The issue will be whether or not he can shoot from long distance. At 48, I have Jalen Slauson out of Furman, a playmaking center who can pass, score, and shoot a little bit while also protecting the rim and guarding out in space. Coming in at 49, I have Justin Mutz out of Virginia Tech, one of the best passing big men in this class. Thick-framed forward who can really play physically on the defensive end. Just a high-field player who hustles and makes good decisions on both ends of the floor. At 50, I have Adam Flagler out of Baylor, really impressed as a shooter throughout his time in Waco. I thought he really showed a lot as a passer, playing point guard in Baylor's offense this past season as well, but the issue will be whether his scoring and passing is good enough to offset his defensive limitations given his size. My last guy in tier 7 is Julian Phillips out of Tennessee. One of the best vertical athletes in the class and is a very high-end defender. My issue is that he really didn't provide anything offensively for Tennessee. I'm not sure if he can shoot it. I'm not sure if he can put the ball on the floor, and that really makes me worry. And finally, we've reached tier 8, which I consider high-priority two-way deal bets. These are guys that I'm not sure will spend their full careers in the NBA, but I think are worth taking a swing on for one reason or another. Leading off this tier is Isaiah Wong out of Miami. He's just someone that I really like because of how he can make difficult shots with relative ease. I'm not sure what he gives you defensively or as a playmaker, but if you want someone to just come in and knock down shots and give you buckets, I think Isaiah Wong definitely has a place in that discussion. Next up is Jalen Clark as one of the best defenders in college basketball this past season. Really active both on and off the ball. He'll fight over screens, he'll dig down, he'll get steals. The issue will be his offense and whether or not he can shoot it reliably. I think he has decent playmaking instincts, but he's definitely more of an off-ball guard. I have no concerns about him defensively, but really if he can't shoot, it's tough for me to see him sticking on an NBA floor. At 54, I have Keyonte Johnson. He's a built wing who really grew as a shooter this past year at Kansas State. He's a great vertical athlete and also provides some real glue guy skills like rebounding, defense, and hustle. But again, he's one of these guys where if he doesn't shoot, I'm not not sure if all of that is good enough for him to stick. At 55, I have Hunter Tyson as someone who can just come in and knock down 3-point shots. Very effective rebounder and scorer for Clemson this year. I have worries about the foot speed and defensive efficacy, but he's worth taking a flyer on as a knockdown shooter with size. At 56, I have Jalen Wilson, who was really impressive for Kansas this year, but I'm just not sure if the role he played at Kansas is at all applicable to the NBA. He was awesome as a volume scorer for the Jayhawks this past season, but he didn't really have the efficiency to back up giving him that role in the NBA. And then from there, I'm not sure if he's a good enough shooter or defender to be a consistent rotation player. At 57, I have Tristan Vukcevic from KK Partizan. Really, it's all about the shooting stroke with Vukcevic. He was a 37% three-point shooter while being 7 foot tall, and that holds value for him as a stretch big. The problem is I'm not sure if he really can defend anybody in the NBA. At 58, I have Terquavion Smith out of North Carolina State, someone who's a very solid athlete and can really create his own shot whenever he wants to, but the efficiency, the decision making, and the defense are all major concerns. At 59, I have Adama Sanogo at 6'9", 240. He's really good at holding his ground and just making life difficult for other big men, but he is undersized for the center position. I'm not sure if he has the mobility to guard in space, and guys who are undersized with limited vertical pop and lateral mobility tend to have a hard time staying in the NBA. And finally, at 60, I have Tavion Kinsey out of Marshall. Very productive player for the Thundering Herd over the last few seasons. Averaged 22 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists this past year, while also knocking down 40% of his threes. I'm not sure if he can really guard anybody defensively, and I do have worries about the consistency of the shot, but he definitely is worth taking a flyer here at the end of the draft. And with that, my official 2023 NBA Draft Big Board has been revealed. Thanks so much for watching throughout the draft cycle. I've had a blast creating content, and remember, if you want more detailed scouting reports on all 60 of these players, click the link in the description below where you can find my 47,000 word draft guide where I'm able to really flesh out my thoughts on all of these players. Thanks so much for watching, and as always, give me any thoughts you have below.